One little mouse had everything he could ever want. Another little mouse had almost nothing. But when danger came knocking, which mouse was truly richer? Once upon a time, in a beautiful green countryside, there lived a little mouse named Milo. Milo was a country mouse. He lived in a tiny, cozy home beneath the roots of a huge, old oak tree. Every morning, Milo woke up to birds singing outside his window. Butterflies fluttered over the flowers, a sparkling stream flowed through the fields, and the warm, golden sun filled the countryside with light. For breakfast, he ate a few grains of wheat, some berries, corn, and nuts. Sometimes, if he was very lucky, he found a tiny piece of cheese. To Milo, this simple food was more than enough. One sunny afternoon, Milo was inside his little home when suddenly, knock, knock, knock! He hurried over and opened it. Standing outside was his cousin, Theo, the town mouse. "Theo!" cried Milo happily. "Milo," said Theo, "it's so good to see you." The two cousins hugged each other warmly. "Come inside," he said. "You must be hungry after your journey." He brought grains of wheat, fresh berries, some corn, crunchy nuts, and even a tiny piece of cheese he had been saving. He placed everything carefully on little leaf plates. "There," Milo said proudly, "a special feast for my favorite cousin." Theo looked at the food. He picked up one tiny grain of wheat and stared at it. "Is this what you eat every day?" Theo asked. Milo smiled. "Yes, it's fresh, tasty, and there is plenty to share." Theo took a small bite. Yes, very nice," he said politely. But Milo could tell that Theo was not very impressed. Later that evening, the two cousins sat outside beneath the stars. Fireflies glowed softly in the grass. Crickets chirped nearby. Everything was quiet and peaceful. Theo looked around and shook his head. "I don't know how you live like this." "In the town, I eat cakes, biscuits, bread, fruit, pudding, cheese, and sometimes even chocolate." Milo's eyes grew wide. "Chocolate?" "Oh, yes," Theo said. "You should come to the town with me. I'll show you what a real feast looks like." His eyes sparkled with excitement. "Come with me tomorrow." Milo hesitated for a moment. Then he smiled. "All right, I would love to see the town." Early the next morning, the two cousins began their journey. Milo carried a tiny travel bundle over his shoulder, while Theo confidently led the way. Slowly, the countryside disappeared behind them. In the distance, Milo could see tall buildings. The quiet fields gradually gave way to busy roads. Soon the two mice reached the town, and Milo could hardly believe his eyes. Carts rolled loudly along the streets, bicycles rushed past, people hurried in every direction. Everything seemed to be moving at once. Milo covered his ears. "It's so loud!" he cried. Theo smiled. "You'll get used to it." At last, Theo stopped in front of an enormous house. Milo looked up, and up, and up. The doors seemed taller than trees. The windows glowed with warm light. The walls were decorated beautifully. "This is where you live?" Milo asked in amazement. Theo smiled proudly. "Welcome to my home." Late that night, when the house had become quiet, Theo led Milo toward a tiny hole near the bottom of the wall. "Follow me," he whispered. Then they peeked from behind a piece of furniture. Milo's mouth fell open. In front of them stood the biggest dining table he had ever seen, and on top of it was an enormous feast. There was bread, cheese, grapes, fruit, biscuits, cake, cream, pudding, and all kinds of delicious leftovers. Milo stared in amazement. "I have never seen so much food." Theo grinned. "I told you." The two mice climbed up the hanging tablecloth. When they reached the top, the food looked even bigger. Huge slices of cake towered above them. Grapes looked almost as large as Milo's head. Milo took a tiny bite of cake. His eyes opened wide. "Oh, wow," Theo laughed. "Good, isn't it?" "It's amazing," Milo cried. Soon both mice were eating happily. Milo tasted cheese and pudding. Theo enjoyed a biscuit. For a moment, Milo thought, maybe town life really was wonderful. But suddenly, bang! The dining room door flew open. Bright light flooded into the room. Milo and Theo froze. A servant stood in the doorway. She stared at the table. Then her eyes widened. "Mice!" "Run!" shouted Theo. The two cousins raced across the table. Plates wobbled. Crumbs flew everywhere. A broom swept behind them. The two mice jumped down, raced across the floor, and disappeared into their mouse hole just in time. Inside, Milo sat against the wall, breathing heavily. His heart was pounding. Oh, that happens sometimes. After a while, the house became quiet again. Theo slowly peeked outside. "All clear," he whispered. Then he turned to Milo. "Come on, there's still plenty of cake." Milo then slowly followed Theo back toward the dining room. Milo picked up a tiny crumb from the floor. Then suddenly, jingle, jingle. Milo froze. His ears stood straight up. What was that? A large house cat stepped into the room. Around its neck was a collar with a tiny bell. "Cat!" cried Theo. The mice ran. The cat bounded playfully after them. The two mice ran faster and faster until they finally slipped underneath the cupboard. Safe at last. Milo's whole body was shaking. I had more fear tonight than I have had in my whole life in the countryside. You get used to it. Milo shook his head. I don't want to get used to being scared. At home, I may only have grains, berries, corn, and nuts. But I can sit beneath the stars without worrying. I can eat my dinner without someone chasing me with a broom. And I can sleep peacefully without a cat waiting outside. I would rather have a simple meal with peace than a grand feast filled with fear. The next morning, Milo said goodbye to Theo. Then he began his journey back to the countryside. As the busy town disappeared behind him, the noise slowly faded. Soon, Milo could hear birds singing again. Leaves rustled gently in the breeze. Milo smiled. Home. When he reached his oak tree house, he prepared a simple meal. A few grains, one berry, a nut, and some corn. Milo carried the meal outside and sat beneath the glowing sunset. Fireflies danced around the flowers. Birds flew back to their nests. The countryside was quiet, safe, and peaceful. Milo took a bite of his simple meal and smiled. It tasted perfect. A simple life filled with peace and safety can be far better than a luxurious life filled with fear. And that is the story of the town mouse and the country mouse. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us again for more magical stories.